Utopia is now open every day from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. and till 1 a.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Chill out with a craft cocktail or an ice cold beer, and Utopia's got the latest gaming machines with big jackpots ready for you to win. Need the perfect spot for your next celebration? Utopia features a beautiful event venue, available now for parties, reunions, and private events. So come see what all the buzz is about. The drinks are cold, the space is hot, and Utopia is ready for you.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Muddy. I'm Ashley Conrad. Joining me today, CEO of Quanada, Megan Duesterhaus. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. So we're here to talk a little bit about ICASA, which is the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault.
Yes.
And of course, you know, as we were talking a little bit about it before, it's something I think everyone can get behind, but maybe not everybody knows that it is out there, what it does, what its connection to Quincy and Quanada is. So let's get into it. ICASA, which is Illinois Coalition for short, right? What is its mission as a whole, its vision?
So ICASA's vision is really to eliminate sexual violence from our communities entirely, which we have a lot of work to go if we're going to get there, but that's their aspirational goal. They operate in two really important ways. The first way is they're a pass-through funder for a lot of the funding for sexual assault programs throughout the entire state of Illinois. So they set our standards, they monitor that we're spending the money in the right way, that our programs are developed in the right way, serving victims in the way that is best practice. But the other thing that they really do is they are headquartered in Springfield, and so they have a lot of involvement with the Illinois General Assembly where they are constantly advocating for substantive legislation and also funding for sexual assault survivors on the state as a whole. So Quanada is a member center of the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault. So they are a funder. We have several funding contracts with them, but we also participate in that legislative advocacy process because they get the information from advocates on the ground doing direct services with clients, and then that is how they decide what things they want to advocate for to the General Assembly. And so we participate in that by contacting our legislators and visiting Springfield and putting things out onto our socials and things like that.
Right. So and then Quanada, of course, you play an integral part because, as you mentioned, ICASA does work with legislatures to get policies passed, to get bills passed. And we were talking before about a lot of these bills that we can see that are being worked on currently. Some of them are supplemental to bills passed previously. Some of them seem like they should be no-brainers.
I think that's always the case.
Right?
You're always going to have some no-brainers. Like, we didn't think we would need to write this into a law, but we do.
Right. Yeah. So I want to get into a few of those bills in just a minute. But it is important to be said that even local representatives are very much behind, advocating for sexual assault victims and domestic violence victims, because it is something that we all can get behind.
Right. Yeah. We don't see domestic and sexual violence as partisan issues. And my experience with the Illinois General Assembly and voters in Adams County just solidifies that for me. So about 10 years ago, there was a campaign in Illinois for Marsy's Law, which was an amendment to the Illinois State Constitution for the Crime Victims' Rights Amendment. This was something that we had to vote on. Everybody had to vote on it. Voters in Adams County passed the amendment by like 70% voting yes, which is huge to have that kind of consensus in a small community. And I also, when I go and when I visit with legislators, either in district or in Springfield, I'm never starting the conversation with domestic and sexual violence are bad, and let me try to convince you of why. They already know that. We already agree upon that. What we're looking at more is process and procedure and how things fit together and work within our laws. Right.
So Marsy's Law is one of the bills. So we were talking about, how ICASA helps to get some of these things passed, as well as Quanada. Marsy's Law came about for a very interesting reason that I would like for you to talk about a little bit, if you don't mind.
So there was a young woman, Marcy Lee Nichols, in California, and I think this was in like the mid to late 80s. She was stalked and murdered by an ex-boyfriend. The ex-boyfriend was arrested and charged. But after the funeral, her family stopped by a convenience store to get some bread on their way home, and they did not realize that the perpetrator had bonded out.
Okay.
And they ran into him in the grocery store, and there was like a confrontation.
Sure.
And it was obviously terrible for the family. Her mother was the one that experienced the confrontation. And so they obviously, got on the phones and started calling legislators and people they know. Well, it turned out at that time in California, there was no stanute that said victims must receive this notice.
Sure.
That if they're letting the person out.
A no-brainer.
Right. So Marcy's brother, Dr. Nichols, he invented some kind of like IBM chip or something like that. And so he had all these discretionary funds,
sure.
and he has used those throughout his lifetime to go to different states and help each state do a similar kind of process so that we have, the accused have rights, but the victims also have a similar set of rights. So it was really a parity bill
right.
that happened. And so Illinois, we passed ours in 2014. The statewide kickoff campaign was actually in Quincy.
Wow.
Which was a fun experience because they called me and said, hey, would you be willing to let us come do this on your shelter lawn? And I'm like, are you really even asking?
Absolutely,
just come. So that was great. And then it was just it's always so good whenever we can get something accomplished that doesn't feel like it was like hostile.
Sure.
It was everybody working together.
Right.
There's going to be differences of opinions. That's how really the legislature works. It's a bunch of compromise.
Yes.
All of the time. And so that, set us off on a really good path over the past 10 years that we have really built on that momentum and passing like really effective, impactful statutes in the state of Illinois.
And some of them, again, I say they're no-brainers. I'm reading through some of the recent bills that have been passed and voted on. There are a few interesting ones. I think they're all interesting. So you have this information at your fingertips that you can go, it's called the bill tracker, right? That you can go look at this.
Well, what you have is the bill tracker that ICASA publishes and sends out to member centers. And it maybe is also posted on a public-facing website too. None of this is, we don't operate in secrecy.
Gotcha.
So I'm free to kind of do whatever I want with this.
Right.
But you can absolutely go to the ilga.gov website, I think, and learn all of the things. You can look at the text for all the bills. You can see them moving through the system. You click on your legislators. It will show you, their voting records on things. You can even know if I want to say, hey, I want to know what bills are important to Senator Tracy this session.
Yes.
I can look that up because I can see which ones she sponsored or co-sponsored.
Yes.
So when I go to talk to her, I come in with something informed to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And you did send that the tracker of how they're voting. I think it's really interesting to look
Everybody
at that.
got an A.
Yes.
That's what happened. So that's what's so amazing. It was when you look at these, we had 11 bills that ICASA was supporting this past spring make it through both the House and the Senate. And when you look at the voting records, it's like they're passing unanimously.
Yeah.
Or occasionally there's like one person who had like one weird thing and they voted no, and then like hundreds of other people voted yes.
Right.
I think that's a real accomplishment. And I also think that we should be thanking our legislators, regardless of if they're an R or a D or an I. Sure. If they do something that you like, then you should tell them.
Absolutely.
Because they get a lot of negative feedback.
Right.
They need to know when they're doing the thing and meeting our expectations so that they will be encouraged and supported to keep doing that.
Yes, so if you look at the tracker, some of the bills we want to talk about, some have to do with the workplace, some have to do with minors, which, again, no brainer, I keep saying it, but it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we have to write this into law. But give me a couple of the most interesting ones as it pertains to maybe relevancy for our community and worldwide, probably,
sure,
right?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the non-consensual digital factors.
Oof,
so
that's going to be
let me turn
our
my
big
page
hurdle.
Here. This one, so House Bill 3671 allows that individuals charged with non-consensual dissemination of sexual images, they can either be tried in the county where the offense occurred, so wherever they were at when they posted whatever to the internet or send the text message, or it can be where the victim resides.
Okay.
So what's happening here is, when crimes are committed virtually, jurisdiction becomes an issue because where was it? Where is the internet? No one really knows. It's not a geographic place. But it's a burden for survivors if you say something like, okay, well, you live in Quincy, but this person that did this to you now lives in Rockford. So we're going to charge them in Rockford because that's where they live and that's where they posted the image from. And that means you're going to have to come to court and do all these things in Rockford.
Sure.
Let's not do that. So now we have a statute that says you can charge it in either place where it occurred or where the victim resides.
Okay.
So that potentially the victim has the possibility that it can disrupt their life as little as possible if it goes to trial.
And you would think, because my thought process says, well, of course, it's going to be where the victim wants it to be or where it is, but that's not always cut and dry, right? And also, we don't know if the victim is telling the, there's a lot of things going in, and I'm not trying to that's not a victim shame. I'm just saying due process, right? But the logic behind it doesn't always stick. So these things have to be written into law, which I think is, a huge part of both Quanada and ICASA and making sure that these things are passed. So there was another one on there about a sexual violence kit, which I didn't know that this was even a thing.
I know.
So
well,
really
I'm glad because we don't want people to know because this is not a good thing.
Yes.
So in the normal set of circumstances, when someone is experiences sexual violence, they'll go to Blessing emergency room because Blessing here, that's our treatment hospital for sexual violence.
Right.
So if you go to Blessing and you say, I'm here because I was sexually assaulted, there's a whole procedure that gets kicked off.
Right.
And one of the things that happens there is the sexual assault nurse examiners, the SANEs, which is a special kind of nurse with a lot of advanced training, they collect the evidence. The body is the evidence, and they're collecting it from the person. And it is a lot of training, both like book learning and in practice training before you can be qualified to do this. But this is how you get good evidence if you're going to go to trial. And we've come a long way just in the past 10 years technologically overall, but also just with our small hospital in a rural part of the state. A couple years ago, there was a young entrepreneur who had what she thought was a great idea where she had decided that the situation is terrible to have to go get an evidence collection kit after you've been sexually assaulted. And she thought, well, we can just avoid this. We can let victims do these on their own at home and self-test. Okay, that's not going to work.
In theory, it sounds like
good,
it came from a good place in her heart.
You are not a qualified medical provider. Never seen the contents of the kit before. There's no chain of custody. It's a science, not just like a thing you can just pick up and do on your own. It's not a moneymaker. Yeah. It's not a moneymaker, right. No. Probably the opposite.
Yes.
And so she started trying, and she actually had called them the Me Too kit, which there may be some issues there with
negative
copyright.
connotation. Yeah.
And so she started going to universities saying, hey, you should buy these kits for me for your students. And I think several schools in Illinois were getting these queries. And so we immediately contacted our state attorney general and we're like, hey, what's going on with this? And so the attorney general issued a public letter at that point that was like, these are unacceptable and will not be accepted as evidence and not allowed and probably violating some law somewhere. But there have been some repeated attempts by other people to kind of do this same sort of thing. And so I can't remember what House bill, there's now a bill that passed that those are totally disallowed.
Yes.
Like the statute says, no, we don't do at-home medical evidence collection kits for sexual assault purposes.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
Right.
It just, in case you had any questions,
yeah,
we all agree.
We're not using at-home kits.
We're not using at-home
kits.
Just go to Blessing. They are qualified, competent, compassionate providers, and there will be a representative from Quanada there if you choose to speak to one, but don't let that be the thing that keeps you from seeking care.
Right. But it just goes to show you the breadth of the spectrum of these bills, right? So from this seemingly to Marcy's Law to, everything in between to help advocate for victims and help make sure that people are getting the right support, the right care, doing the right things on both, the accused and the victim side. There are certain bills that apply to both. But all of that information is there. It's all really interesting. I also want to know how Quanada obviously plays a role with ICASA, being the feet on the street, the eyes and the ears as a crisis center, right? What, aside from that role, You also play a huge part in our community.
Right, direct services.
Yes, direct services. So let's talk a little bit, because I know everybody drives down Main Street, right? They know that you have the big house and you do a lot of stuff there almost every day. You're helping victims almost every day. I didn't realize you also had an office at 19th and Harrison.
Yes.
Okay, so if I don't know all these resources exist, and I'm a woman in Quincy who's lived here her whole life, maybe other people don't know, and it might be worth it to talk a little bit about that.
So, and I do think a lot of times people, when you say Quanada, the first thing that pops in their mind is either those stickers in the bathrooms or the shelter building, because it takes up an entire city block and it's this giant brick mansion-y looking thing. That location at 27th Main is where we do our domestic violence shelter. It's where our administrative offices are, and we also do walk-in services for domestic violence survivors out of that location. All of the sexual assault services in this area are provided out of the 1900 Harrison building, and people do commonly confuse those.
Yes.
The good news for everyone listening or watching is that the hotline number is the same, regardless of what service you're trying to access. So if you're calling the number, like, you're calling the right number. Our phones are all connected.
Yes.
And then we also have outlying county offices in Pittsfield, Rushville, and Mount Sterling, so that people living in those areas wouldn't necessarily have to travel to Quincy for walk-in services, although unfortunately we don't have a shelter in those counties. And then we operate a transitional housing program where at any given time we have 10 to 11 units that we've leased in the agency's name for clients to live in while they're doing that program.
So housing, of course, other necessities, counseling, right? So you're providing all of these resources.
Counseling, a lot of legal advocacy. So orders of protection will help you get that paperwork done, write the statement, go with you to court, follow up with you, make sure that you understand how to report violations of the order. And then the medical advocacy that we respond to the hospital for. We have a really great support group for survivors of domestic violence right now on Wednesdays. All you have to do is, like, if you are a survivor, you can join that group simply by calling us and letting us know you want to do that. And we have a children's group that goes on simultaneously. So you come in, you have dinner prepared by our cook, and then your kids go off to do an activity while you get some time to do socializing with peers, and like usually some kind of facilitated discussion led by a counselor. And maybe there's a kickball tournament. We do like a lot of stuff. We have a lot of like event party planner types on staff. And so they're always like,
they're looking
for
the
like
next
we can't,
cool thing.
like we can't just have a Halloween party. We have to bring a hearse in as part of the decoration. It gets to be a little bit over the top.
But that's good.
We have fun.
I think it's necessary to bring, of course, victims back into it.
And then we also have the Land of Lincoln offices on the 10th and Broadway area, and it's a Land of Lincoln office, but they provide no-cost attorney services for orders of protection and family cases. And we fund that, but we subcontract that to their staff, because Quanada on its own doesn't have the ability to supervise attorneys and that sort of thing. And we can also, we have a partner in Chicago that will do family defense and immigration for survivors and economic justice, mostly remotely. So they'll come down here if they have like an in-person hearing. It's a lot of DCFS stuff. That's a different show.
I was going to say that's a lot.
But so that's no cost to our survivors too. So we've never had any kind of attorney services prior to like the past 2 years. So that's a huge step for us. And then I sometimes kind of forget about this one. We have a partner abuse intervention program that's for perpetrators of domestic violence. And that is on 3rd and Oak. We don't have those two populations meeting in the same location for obvious reasons. And that's mostly going to be people that are court ordered to attend these psychoeducational groups to try to like help them develop better skills and like shift their thinking about what it means to be in a healthy relationship.
So again, just a wide breadth of services and resources available to our community. Real quick, because I know we're running out of time, but do you see the numbers increasing as we kind of move through time, or do you see any trends?
Oh, there's definitely trends. So during the pandemic, it was like the world stopped. And so that's obvious what's happening there. And then after the pandemic, we've seen like certain types of services have accelerated more than others. So for example, prior to the pandemic, we used to respond to sexual assault patients at Blessing 25 to 30 times a year. After the pandemic, it shot back up, and now it's between 75 and 100. And that's been consistent now for like 3-4 years. I've lost track of time since the pandemic.
But
so that's not going away. And it's not necessarily to say that there's more sexual violence, but for whatever reason, people are like more likely to seek medical attention for that.
Talking about it.
The other thing that we have really noticed is it's not so much that we're seeing more people coming in with domestic violence issues, but the things they're coming to us with are more serious and more likely to be lethal.
Gotcha.
So there has been a definite increase in stranglings, which is extremely dangerous. If you have a survivor tell you anything about hands on neck at all, that is an automatic referral for a CT scan because there's so many things that can go wrong in that area. And so it's been scary. Knives, gunshot wounds, not as often, although that is one of the primary causes of death for domestic violence survivors. And also just even like visible bruises at all. Because a lot of times when someone comes in, at least historically, it's like people have this idea that the person comes in looking really beaten up. And like often that's not the case. It's all like the history of what's been happening and a lot of the emotional and financial and psychological like
comes in so
intimate terrorism
forms.
That's happening. But now it's almost like not surprising when someone shows up like who's visibly been perpetrated on. And so that's scary for us. Also at the same time, we're seeing a lot of like people that not only are experiencing domestic violence, but they have a history of substance use disorder and also mental health diagnoses. And all those things kind of work together to keep people locked. And
they intermingle, for sure.
And it makes it so much harder to help people get stabilized when some of that stuff we're just not qualified to address because we do domestic violence. We aren't qualified to do substance use or like we're not a mental health provider. We don't prescribe meds. We don't do diagnoses. So we need the whole community to
Absolutely. Which I think, you're tackling what you can and with, the help of ICASA and other groups in the community and community engagement. And I know that you have your fair share of challenges that are coming up. AI, of course, you're going to have a lot of new problems to tackle in a bunch of different ways. But I think with the community's engagement and help and reporting and making sure that we kind of stay ahead of things and then making sure the right bills are being passed, the right communication is there, engagement. So how do you encourage the community's engagement, involvement with Quanada or ICASA or whatever?
Well, first of all, if there's ever something that you're seeing like in the legislature, or if you have a specific experience where you think like maybe there should be a law, those are the kind of things that you could either come to us with or you could go straight to a legislator. Because either route that you take, we're all going to get involved in it eventually, but a lot of times that's how legislation starts, is that someone has like a specific experience where the law did not meet the moment, and so it takes people to communicate that in order to do anything about it. Otherwise we might not know. The other thing that you can do is, and I do this a lot via email specifically with my board members and staff, but it's also some things that we'll put on socials, and we could do more of this in the future where we say, hey, if you got an extra 3 minutes today, slip this bill. Where you literally just go to ILGA and like put that you're a proponent of like, I want it to be illegal to do at-home medical forensic kits, and you just say, I'm a proponent of that, record of appearance only, and submit. But then there's like a list that the people on the committee and the General Assembly can see. So they can see who's supporting it and where they're from. And a lot of times just paying attention is helping us get the leverage to keep pushing things forward.
Right. And you may not, be directly impacted with sexual assault, with domestic violence, but chances are someone is or will be someone and love. So
And you may not know that.
Right. And get involved, get engaged, make sure that, some of these even no-brainer bills are being passed by simply going to sign your name.
They seem like minutia, but like there's so many intricacies of legislation and so many things that impact other things that you do have to be very careful and very like specific and get granular like that with a lot of these things to get it right.
Absolutely. And then aside from that, of course, Quanada offering so many resources to our community for advocacy, necessities, helping sexual assault victims, domestic violence victims, The resources are there. If you need it, reach out. If you want more information, where would they go?
You can go to quanada.org,
Okay.
QUANADA.org. That's Quincy Area Network Against Domestic Abuse.
Okay.
So that's actually an acronym.
Yes.
Or you can call our 24-hour crisis hotline at 1-800-369-2287.
Well, thank you so much for all the work
Thank
you're
you.
doing. Keep it up. Yeah, get engaged. This will, it's not going away. So get engaged and learn more about Quanada and the awesome resources available to our community and ICASA and what they're doing to help victims and to advocate for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate you. All right. Coming up next, I sit down with DOB. We talk about business scams. Stay tuned.
Welcome out to Kelly's on Broadway tonight. We're drinking cold beer and it feels so right. I'll meet you out on Broadway underneath Shamrock Light. We're gonna have a good time on the patio tonight. There's a party down at Kelly's on Broadway tonight. We're drinking cold beer on a champagne night. We're feeling all alone and you got no place to go. So come down here and drink a beer on Kelly's patio. Kelly's a fun place to eat and drink. 2902 Broadway.
Welcome to Cedar Club, Quincy's favorite local bar. A friendly corner bar with a laid-back atmosphere and affordable drinks. It's the perfect spot for a great time. With entertainment galore, including shuffleboard, golden tea, pool, foosball, and winning gaming machines. Cedar Club's latest edition is the best spot to catch your favorite game. Great drinks, great friends, and great times. Cedar Club, 20th and Cedar in Quincy.
The Liquor Booth is your home for a huge selection of beer, wine, and spirits. The Liquor Booth has 2 locations in Quincy, 3520 Broadway and 1500 North 12th Street. The Liquor Booth, where it's always happy hour.
Welcome to the Abbey, a Quincy tradition. With 6 big screens, a new larger kitchen, and now more seating capacity, the Abbey is the place to be. Before, during, and after the big game. Come enjoy fan favorite appetizers, steaks, burgers, and a variety of daily food and drink specials. Can't join us? Carryout is available too. Now with a convenient drive-up window to better serve you. 1736 Spring in Quincy. Opens at 3 p.m. Tuesday through Sunday. Come join all your friends at the Abbey, a Quincy tradition.
The Tower, a great place to meet and eat. But did you know the Tower has one of the finest drink selections in our area? Along with its incredible Mexican menu, the Tower specializes in tequilas for every taste. Names like Patron, Cabo Wabo, and Hornitos. And don't forget the margaritas. On Mondays and Tuesdays, stop by and pick up a single topping pizza and get Tower margaritas to go. Enjoy the Tower at home or in our dining room, bar area, or the Tower's signature climate-controlled porch. The Tower Pizza and Mexican in Quincy.
Instant Replay is your local sports bar. With 18 big screen TVs, we have all the sports packages from college games to pro games. We offer daily drink specials and come check out the Bullpen, our newly renovated beer garden. Instant Replay, 2739 Chestnut in Quincy.
And we're back. Now joining me, my pal, Don O'Brien, DOB with the BBB. What is shakin'?
It's summertime.
It is. Summertime. Okay, so we're talking today about business scams.
Yes.
Now, when I say that, there's such a large umbrella, right?
Yes, there is.
And we all work in business.
Sure.
And there are so many different types of scams that we could all fall victim to. So give me kind of a few examples of what we're talking about today.
Yes. So, we come on here week after week and we talk about, as a consumer, you need to be aware of this, that, or this. Mm-hmm. And now we're talking about business scams. And Better Business Bureau, we have an international investigations initiative. We have a gentleman out in New York City who looks at, a lot of the investigations I do locally and regionally, I'm like on the ground level. He looks at it way up here. So business scams, they can happen to any size business. Of course, we hear sometimes about the businesses, large businesses that have data breaches and they lose millions of dollars and your information, and it's just a big thing. There are also ones on a much smaller scale. I've done this interview a couple times, and I was talking to one of the radio DJs, and I said, okay, there's an example of you might get something in the mail saying, oh, your website registry is due, and you need to pay us $199 for your website registry. And if you don't do this within a week, you're going to lose your website, which is totally bogus. These people have nothing to do with your website. What they're doing is they want to put your website on their registry. Nothing to do with your
actually having it
you know,
out there on the www.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because
Yeah.
you have your own administrator for that. You have your own probably every year or two or however long you sign it up for. So people see that and they're like, oh my gosh, if I don't answer this quickly, I'm going to lose my website.
Right.
We may have an e-commerce website. We may, selling goods to the public through our website. We don't want to have anything happen to that. I'm going to send my $199 in, and boom, we're good to go. So, that's on a small scale, but we see people fall victim to that a lot. You can see things as simple as, there are vanity awards programs where you can be the best of Quincy or the best of Hannibal. If you pay us $149, we'll send you this thing saying you've been nominated to be
you are the #1 in town.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
If you win an award, you should not have to pay for that award.
If you're voted to be #1,
you do not have to pay for anything.
Right.
So that's another thing. Fake invoices are another form of scam. We saw that I think about 2 years ago in Monroe City. Their city got some fake invoices they mimicked actual suppliers or vendors that Monroe City has used. So they lost tens of thousands of dollars in that because they went ahead and they paid these invoices without double checking them. So
we've seen recently at JHF, we've seen even scammers are getting really, really good at mimicking customer. So we deal, primarily B2B. So we have people mimicking purchase orders and having it sent to their house, right? So if we're not careful, we're entering these purchase orders of goods and, that we're selling, and we ship it to this person's house, assuming that it's our customer.
Yes.
And because, we may not know that that's a no-no. So there's all kinds of things that are and phishing and that are affecting us every day.
Yeah. So if you're an employer, you really need to educate your employees on what scams are out there. You need to let them know what things, and it's there's hundreds of different types of businesses, and what works for, what one has to do, the other wouldn't necessarily have to do.
Right.
But you want to educate your employees. With the invoices, you might want to think about, instead of just having one person in your organization who pays everything, make sure that you have a couple sets of eyes on that. Because I think that was one of the problems in the situation I talked about earlier. There's just one person. They thought, oh, well, we do business with these people all the time.
Yeah, used to seeing it all the time.
Let's send it out. So, there's all kinds of stuff. There's about a 6 or 8 page, study on this.
Things to look for.
Yeah, if you go to bbb.org, you can find that out. But, there's all kinds of stuff, about this. It can just be, it can be really damaging for your business if you get taken. If you lose $199 on a website, that's not a big deal. But that scammer's making out if he gets 100 people to do that, and they've made a lot of money for doing nothing.
Right.
So.
And you don't know where your website's ending up, on what list and what.
Well, and then what happens is that scam, the business actually figures it out, and then again, it's to be on our list of websites. We're going to put you in with the contractors or whoever it is. So it's all
baloney.
Baloney. Yes, that's a good word.
Yeah, it's all baloney. Well, so common things to look out for can be found on bbb.org. Also, how to avoid these things. To begin with, I mean, I know we do certain trainings with our employees that we have to do. It's like a training course that we go through to look out for these types of things. But that's not available to everybody. So the bbb.org will help you pinpoint some things to look out for, but also help you report things if you've been a victim, so that other people are made aware that these things are happening, right? And there's the tracker. So where would they go aside from bbb.org? So of course your phone number. Right.
Yeah, I mean, you can give me a 217-209-3972, like on reporting or
education. Looking at things, like just educating yourself.
Well, if you're ever taken advantage of online, the FBI has an Internet Crime Complaint Center at IC3.gov. That's I and C and then 3.gov. Okay. And you can report things like that in there. Okay. So there's plenty, and again, we're really big about making sure you report these things, because we can't help you or help others that may follow you up if you don't report it.
Right, absolutely. So keep an eye out and report if it happens, and be aware, because it's out there everywhere, every day, no matter what size business, no matter what type of business, right? They're out there. So Don, thank you so much for coming in, as always. Always a pleasure, even though we're always talking about the
bad stuff.
The baloney,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I think that does it for today's Daily. We'll catch you back here tomorrow for Club Muddy. See you then.